Welcome again to the Forensic Happy Hour. It's Friday already, which is it's crazy. The weeks continue to fly by. I don't know if it's Groundhog Day or what, but I wake up and it's kind of the same thing. But Fridays are always good because I get to talk to real live people and drink beer. I think drinking beer is probably the best, but there's an exception to that because I have Kipp Loving. This is going to be on the show, and we were just kind of talking about how long we've known each other, and I think it's about 20 years, which is crazy. So there's going to be some great topics I know that are going to come up, and so I'm looking forward to get back into this. So without further ado, I will say hello and cheers to Kipp Loving. Hello. And
cheers.
First time drink. And so as always, I want to make sure that I get and have the guest give us kind of, their background and, where you started, what you were doing, some of those kind of the highlights, and just give everyone kind of like this is how awesome your life has been.
There you go, Lee. So, first off, hey, honored to be here. I was doing the same thing, looking back at the years and how far we went back, and then as our paths crossed going forward, and as we needed resources, and we're writing the book as we went along, is the best way to put it. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be in here. As far as my background, it's a little different. It was a little different back then when we were trying to forge our way. And there, lack of a better term, you walk into a lot of agencies nowadays, and there might actually be in the investigations unit a door that says high tech unit. Well, I was working, property crimes or patrol. This is actually the first time that, somebody's like, hey, you kind of know something about this. I think we need some help. And it could have been something as getting a message off of an answer machine. All of a sudden, I was the high tech guy. But where did my background come from? Which goes back way CB radios, ham radios, that sort of thing back in the day, and I'll really date myself. Packard Bell computers, 20 megabyte hard drives, X-Tree, because I didn't want to learn DOS, so I loved X-Tree, and then this whole online thing came along. Probably think I'm going to say CompuServe, but I'm going to date myself more. Prodigy. Okay.
Wow.
Prodigy.
Yeah.
In fact, my old ID was KVDG41A. Still remember it. And and Prodigy, which was, and people out there trying to probably Google it right now, but
Right.
that was a project between Sears and IBM, and that they came up with this. We're going to do this online thing, and the lack of a better term, I ended up in the late 80s and early 2000s when this whole cell phone thing started rolling. I thought it was kind of cool. And there was a tower that popped up in Modesto, California. Yes, I said one tower. Okay. And that was kind of a cool thing. And so I decided to go out and get a cell phone, and it looked something like this.
Oh yes, I love having. Yes, love it.
And
And when people hear bag phone,
sounded,
it's a bag.
yeah, it's a true bag. So yeah, you can put it on your shoulder, the whole nine yards, And
Right.
we've evolved from that to, I was going to save this for later, but this is an actual cell phone. That's my finger.
Zoolander.
Yeah, you can imagine where
Zoolander.
that might be found in a correctional
Exactly.
facility, but I won't go there.
Exactly.
But the back to the process as it went, I ended up as a part owner of a cellular phone store in Modesto, California, while I was working graveyards patrol, and got to know a little bit about cell phone. And the big key, and I'm not sure where our conversation will go, but at some point I'll probably circle around a couple of times to relationships and how important it is that, just like you and I go back a number of years, and when you need to pick up the red phone to get some resources, and I really had a great opportunity to meet people in the industry, non-law enforcement, but in the cell phone industry. We're talking AirTouch, we're talking Cellular One. Again, people are going like, what? Yeah.
Mhm.
And that really kind of springboarded me ahead when we started looking at some of these types of technology as it started intertwining itself in law enforcement specific to certain crimes. And it really kind of moved forward in the late 90s, I would say, and that's when you had investigators actually starting. They'd have a robbery, homicide, burglary, and they might have a cell phone, they might have, and start asking the questions that are pretty commonplace for us today. But back then, it was like, you know, where what can you get? What can you do? What you could go down to Radio Shack and get a cable and download the address book on a phone. Yay, and that was kind of a big deal to be able to do that. So
Winner. I'm a winner if I
yeah,
do that.
exactly. So I'm gonna get to take a sip of my beer while you are.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the things, so I don't forget, is obviously with the telco companies and having the conversation with those telco companies, how important is that, the relationships you're talking about? Because, that's in the time when you're doing, and it's still to this day pretty valuable with the CDRs and everything else, being able to utilize that data, being able to go to a contact, because it was a lot easier back then, just speaking from my own experience, to, trying to obtain some of that information from the telco companies, right?
Yeah, the relate it goes back to the relationships because back then they didn't truly have a subpoena compliance department as we know they do now. They did have a like legal, they would refer it to legal and it was more internal, but you didn't have law enforcement knocking on their door near as much as they didn't have near as much as they do now. And so my relationship actually started with Cellular One, and it was again on the owning the store side, and I got to know some people that knew people, and had a couple of minor low level. We in fact when we did pull, as we know, CDRs, they called them just phone records back then. But if it really didn't pay off much until one particular incident we had, a Modesto case of a certain magnitude, and I got called in on New Year's Eve. And the incident had happened on Christmas Eve, but I got called in on New Year's Eve, and instead of reaching out to at that time the big cell phone company of it's Cellular One,
Yeah.
I was able to make a quick phone call directly on a cell phone to a person in their in their department for records, and that turned out to be key to be able to grab those records early on because that particular person taught me a quick lesson. And our suspect at the time had multiple numbers. He had a business, and the my person I was on the phone with was frustrated with me, saying, "Hey, I think I got all the numbers, but I they have this is a common name." And he asked me, he goes, "Hey, do you have the social security number of your target?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And I give him the social, and he runs it in their system, and it pops up with a number that I knew nothing about. In those, and how important was that? Because that ended up in the wiretaps just a couple of days later. That turned out to be a key, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. And it's those relationships. And I'll fast forward that particular individual. A few years after that, we had a officer killed in California, and I was at my house when I got called out. I was on a day off when I got called out, and as soon as I got the call, I hung up and I called this person. At this time, they were with AT&T, and this is the answer I got. I'm watching it on TV. Is it one of ours? That's what. And he
Yeah.
says, "What do you?" And I told him, "I don't know. I'm just leaving my house. I don't know. I just need you on point." And he goes, "I'm here." How important was that? How important was that?
Yeah.
And I'll go a step further because I can give a lot of different examples of that. But each time you have these individuals help you on your case, get them an attaboy. do up that particular individual, we brought into our task force in Sacramento and gave them a plaque for that case. And those things ride out, and that person still is with AT&T today and has moved up the ladder a little bit again, and is very responsive. So those relationships are extremely important.
And so with that being said, though, there's a lot more red tape, especially trying to obtain this information, right? The legal process. It used to, talking about being able or preservation orders. You know what? I remember being able to call up and I'd call up Cricket, and I mean, I would get the information. You can have that information straight away, and now, sending a preservation order, make sure that you do that because you have to do that because now you have to produce paper and you're going to have to go through that process. So, I mean, having relationships, and I think that's 100%, going in and into these different telcos and these different companies. But the problem is, I think that and I don't want to say it's a bad thing, right? But assisting law enforcement hasn't gotten any easier, right? And bringing that in, and I think especially because with the mobile devices and the things that are being utilized right now, the information is needed right now, versus okay, I'm going to have to go and wait. So, I mean, what kind of advice? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and you see from what you did hands on to what is now unavailable, especially that you have, with your list, and we'll talk about your list later. But I mean, what advice can you give to people?
It is frustrating. It is frustrating. So I'll start out with that. But I'm going to sit here and actually look like I'm sticking up for the subpoena compliance, for these different companies. And I guess I am in a little bit. Keep in mind, most of these people are in a little room somewhere, and they have their phone constantly ringing, their emails constantly packed full of cops around the world, not necessarily just the US, but around the world, kicking their door down, knocking their door, and we make the mistake, or law enforcement will sometimes make the mistake. What's our favorite word on affidavits and search warrants? What's our favorite word? Any and all. Okay. Well, when when you're doing dope or you're doing whatever, okay, that might work. But when you're doing data, man, it can get a little crazy. Have I had my frustrations with their side of the house? Absolutely. Have I had to threaten to, deal with it a different certain way?
I'm going to chain your doors up at the local place, right?
Have I gone over their head? But I've also done a large quantity of attaboys, and that has really, really paid off. Following up, because usually you'll get the email from these individuals. So I'm going to circle around to answer your question, but to finish in regard to the problem, you really have to do your best to be specific on what you actually need, and sometimes you will get it quicker, especially if it's an incident response to exigent circumstance. And we got to stop asking for the world when we don't need the world. And then also recognize that the subpoena compliance, they've gotten in trouble. They've been threatened to be sued from the other side of the fence too. So they're trying to find that fine line. So back to your question on some advice. What's worked for me is, when you're dealing with subpoena compliance, you're a lot of times dealing with an individual person. You've got their email address. Send them an email. Just say, hey, I really appreciate this. Worked out good. What's your supervisor's information? Could you pass on your supervisor? I'd like to just send them a quick note on how responsive you were. So what kind of response are you going to get? I guarantee you're going to get a quick email back, right? But you're also now have accomplished getting another name of somebody at a higher level at that facility. Okay. And I'm not saying that that's the whole purpose of it.
It is
okay?
greasing the wheel, man.
Okay.
That is probably
but you will
get
that has worked out really, really well.
Yeah. So in obviously taking that and trying to get these with the records, let's talk about, some of the or the devices. I mean, how important, because I don't want to say it's rhetorical, but I know what the answer is. Is so back in the day when with the mobile devices and we were going and dumping those and we're so excited to wind up getting 10 text messages, right? We're like, oh my gosh, it's like the best ever because that's all that
Right.
exists. 25 contacts that you have. Right now you have the devices that not only have a ton of say contacts, call logs, any messages on the standard mess, but third-party apps, location data. I mean, how confusing has it become? Data confusion for the person who's doing the collection and getting the information, but then trying to explain that information in court to the prosecutor or try. I mean, how crazy and manic has it gotten?
Well, throw in the next piece of the window there is you're dumping the phone and you're not even tied to the investigation, so you don't know what you're looking for, right? You know,
Right.
and uh, I remember doing phones where it was in a different language, so it might be all in Spanish text, and I remember the homicide team yelling on one particular case, just yelling, yeah, and it was a text 6 minutes after the homicide. Hey, we didn't find the one, but we found the other one, and we sent it. We shot him. Right? That's good information. We call that good evidence. But as I'm going through the text, I didn't even get to celebrate that. Right? So
Right.
the 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 frustration is this. We sometimes you got to keep it simple, take a step back, remember what your investigation is, and try to just focus on that. But we also don't know what we don't know, right? Is there, uh, you know, if you saw a certain narcotics trend in your community, you were pretty good to go for a few years, right? You see an auto theft trend, you're pretty good to go. It's going to be these type of vehicles, Chevy pickups this year, and you're pretty good to go for a while. Good luck with high tech, right? It's frustrating as hell.
Mhm.
And so what I would love to be able to sit here and say, hey, don't worry about all that stuff. But what if you let me pick something. What if you're dumping a phone and you see all the apps and you're looking at it and you're going, hey, okay, Facebook, this, that, okay, all good. What if you see an app called Beartooth? Have you ever heard of Beartooth?
No.
Okay, let
No.
me tell you about Beartooth. Beartooth, in fact, you should be able to, for the viewers, you should be able to just bring it up with that, beartooth.com or something similar to that. But
Mhm.
it's a mesh communications system. So it
I love it.
allows,
Like fire check.
well, I'll take it a step further. It allows you and your dirtbag crew to go into a community. Everybody before you're not tied to this town in Iowa that you're gonna hit the bank, right? And you and your dirtbag crew, before you even land on the plane, your phones are in airplane mode. But you have full voice, you have full text, and you have full encrypted communications, and up to 10 miles. And
Mhm.
it's a mesh system, so if you've got somebody at 3 miles from you and 4 miles from that person, you can just keep going. You have those full communications. Well, how would you know that? In fact, if you saw, I didn't prepare to show you this. So what?
This show is we're never
Yeah.
prepared.
So
Remember.
what would you, in your booking process, what would this be mistaken for?
Yeah. I don't know.
I,
Wallet,
maybe
glasses.
a battery pack for your phone,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is all that it would work that you would find as far as a device, and it's not connected to the phone. Okay, it's just
Mm-hmm.
somewhere within Bluetooth range. And
Right.
so when you find that app on the phone, and it's a Beartooth app, you're you instantly know, okay, they're either hunters, okay, and they're using it legitimately, or they're using it for other communications, and then you start digging into that database and what forensic tools can then dissect the database of that to identify the other devices.
Yeah, that brings up a huge, well, not huge, but it is huge. So employment, last week, in talking to Ali Mellon, we were talking about some cybersecurity stuff, and it kind of ties into a little bit because I brought up the point of of really investigations on mobile devices or anything else, is that a lot of the the automated tools and the tools that are going to collect this information, the apps that are supported are based upon just knowledge, based upon this is what's popular, this is what we think, right? So thinking as a bad guy, if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to be utilizing things that obviously people don't know about, right? So
Gaming.
I'm going to be utilizing like fire
Yep.
chat or this bear tooth or being able to go and communicate. And they bring these things like bear tooth, and they bring all of these things out, and it's funny because fire chat was developed for emergency preparedness, evidently, right?
Hmm.
Allowing you to be able to communicate along, again, the mesh network, being able to go in and piggyback. And obviously the strength is built upon how many people are,
Yep.
and that's so that you can utilize it within an emergency when the cell towers go down, right? Yeah, that's what the bad guys are thinking about. So you think about communication, right? How am I going to communicate? I'm going to communicate with someone through a game. I'm going to communicate through something that isn't known as a messaging app. You're going to use that. So my question to you is, I mean, how prepared are our investigators? Are those that that are doing these types of investigations, these digital investigations, for that type of investigation? I mean, you're bringing up right now, especially with the bear tooth, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't know. I don't know. I know what the technology is once you explained it, but that's just another app. I mean, tomorrow there's another one
Exactly.
that's going to go on. So I mean, how do investigators prepare for this type of data onslaught that the bad guys are being able to utilize?
So keep it simple, and it goes back to the interview. It goes back to sitting down and asking the right questions, and it goes back to your investigative team to look for these things to see how
So do
important.
you think that on the law enforcement side of it, that the lost art of an actual interview with an individual, do you think that people are like, oh, I rely on, don't worry, I have his phone, I'll know everything about it?
There's some frustrations there, and obviously I can't blanket. You see. I mean, Lee, look at it this way: how many units are still or agencies are still struggling to start and or maintain a high tech unit? How many people don't? How many agencies don't take it serious when they identify the personnel they're going to put in these? Get somebody trained up, promote them, fire them, him or her, and or that person retires and they have no succession plan for that individual. I mean, I can give you example after example. Um, my in the last couple of years up until April 1st, I've had the opportunity to be at hundreds of different agencies over the last 2 years specifically across the U.S. And there is a disconnect. There are some agencies extremely impressive. They're up, and their equipment is very, very impressive. Most agencies, that's not the case. And these are agencies that might surprise you. These are big agencies that just really would surprise you. And it's the lost art. You use the term lost art, absolutely. There's some frustration there with just basic information that is critical at the time. When you're initially with these people, when the emotions are high, so whether they're potential suspects or witnesses, to be able to get things as simple as keys. I call it keys to the kingdom. The email address of the suspect that they use, right? Before before everybody's smart enough to have talked to a lawyer about it. And it could be something as simple as, hey, yeah, we're going to take your phone. Oh, you're going to take my phone? Well, yeah, but you know what? We'll email you when we get it back to you. What's the best email for you? And they're going to give you a good email at that point because the
See,
emotions are
I mean,
there, and
are
it's
the
frustrating.
read techniques? I mean, people still going to class for doing the read techniques, investigative techniques. I mean, come on, that's
Well,
fantastic.
but exactly. But here's the thing that I've seen, and I'm speaking mostly on the California side. Um, in most basic academies, you have very little hours dedicated to high tech investigations. And that is up until about 3 years ago, and I don't think it's changed much since.
Yeah, so that's my question. I mean, this has been a frustration for you and I have probably again 20 plus years, and it hasn't changed, right? The thing that hasn't changed is necessarily going in staffing people to do this, right? That I think that some, like you said, there's some agencies that do see this as an issue if we talk about data and trying to go in and examine that information, but I mean, where is that bottleneck, right? How do you get people to understand that it's the information, the phones that we had back then, we still have people, investigators that are trained with 10 contacts and 25 text messages, not like 450 apps that you might have, or being able to go in and cull that
Mm-hmm.
information down and put something together. The data has grown. And I mean, would you agree that you have that, but the investigative, say, staff or the money in the budget put towards high tech crimes hasn't? I mean, hey, it isn't on the same level.
Lee, this is an easy answer. Easy answer. It's leadership. It's leadership. It's leadership of these agencies not taking it serious. I had one police chief tell me, and this was 02-ish. I'm trying to get money, my own specific line item for high tech, and you knew what we were up against then, right? Uh, Quote: "This whole computer thing is just a fad." Okay, that's a quote. That's obviously stuck
Yeah,
with me. I didn't have to,
yeah,
write that down. And that kind of attitude, believe it or not, is cycled into another attitude. Hey, we've gotten, what if we don't under, and this is actually a non high tech. This is in a general law enforcement attitude sometimes, and it's if we ignore it if we don't understand it. Okay, so if we don't understand it, we ignore it. And so think about when you have the opportunity to have different guests on a forum like this. I can't imagine that some of these people, especially on the law enforcement side, are saying, yeah, I was walking through briefing one day and I wanted to be a high tech guy. No, they probably, were tinkering with stuff, very going back in the day. I mean, if I sat here and interviewed
true
you,
story.
yeah, if I sat here and interviewed you, I know a little bit of your background, and it wasn't all of a sudden one day you woke up, right? And
Yeah,
that's where the disconnect is. The leadership of these agencies aren't identifying, because they're there, they're in the agencies.
yeah,
They're not identifying them and cultivating that into a position.
yeah.
And
Interesting.
I've seen agencies do really, really well, very impressive. But I will say most agencies to this day, it's an afterthought. And they think, oh, we can, if it's a big enough case, we'll go and we'll call the feds or we'll do this and that.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that: if we don't understand it, we ignore it.
Yeah, and I think that's that. I mean, it's crazy because again, I brought this point up. I think last week is, and this was on the cyber side with Allie, but also I've had federal, state, local guys that I've talked to, and it's always like, hey, how did you start into this? And they're like, yeah, so I was like in psychology, and I wound up taking this computer class, and I thought it was cool. And then I got in law enforcement, and like, holy, now they think that I'm like the
Mm-hmm.
guy, and I fell in love with it. So it's not necessarily that, they go into it and say, you know what, my life, I was born, and I all of a sudden have a cell phone. I said, I'm going to go in and extract this and examine this, or I have a computer, or I have some network that intrusion stuff that I'm born to do that. It's crazy. Is that but you're right, is that you go in, you show up at briefing, and you have this Palm Pilot, and you're like, okay, I'm just taking my notes on it. They're like, oh, what's that? And they're like, oh yeah, this is just a thing that, oh yeah, you can do the computer forensics now,
It's
right?
exactly.
It's crazy. It's in 100% believe that's what it comes down to, and that a lot of, again, agree 100% with the leadership side of it, is that these people that might have been leadership, they've been doing this, they've been running this agency for so long, and things haven't broke, right? But how long is that going to last, that they're saying, okay, well, yeah, we'll have my detectives go and drive 100 miles because there's a RCFL or there's somewhere else that we can take this, that we can handle that. And the money doesn't come until something happens to that department, as in, the I almost said sea level. I've been out so long, but you have the chief or the sheriff. Something happens to them or their family, and it's all of a sudden, boom. Yes, we need to have a digital crimes unit. It's almost like the money comes based upon some sort of emergency instead of preparing for the inevitable. I mean, it's data isn't going anywhere. Data is going to be utilized more so for cases that are out there, and it's just again, I beat myself up thinking
Frustrating.
of ways of how you can convince people of how important this tech stuff is to combating crime, not only just being reactive to crime.
No, absolutely. And what's extremely frustrating, you just nailed it as far as reactive. And um, one particular agency in California, they lost an officer. We had tried to get them on our high tech unit for years, always invited them to our meetings. After after they had to call in California DOJ to do their investigation for them, and a lot of high tech involved. Everything said and done, they got their guy in custody. Life is good. Guess what? We got a guy from that agency assigned full time, and he got pretty close to a blank check. He was able to spend up to $75,000, and he walked into our office saying, "I don't know where to start. What do I want to ask for?" And of course, we were doing backflips, right, to for that amount. I mean, that's
Right.
just at that,
Right.
especially at that time, you didn't need that. And it's sad. I can give other examples of agencies that it took a death of a true victim that all of a sudden a light bulb came on. And how much are we missing in between? And it's still happening today. I mean, I know you get the phone calls. I get regular phone calls of something as simple as, "Hey, we got a homicide, but we got the vehicle, and this, that, and the other." And well, I missed the question. Do you still have the vehicle? They mention they have the vehicle, and I go through all the process. Yeah, there's some info. There's this company called Burla, blah blah blah. You might want to check on it, and it should be some good stuff. And then they'll come back and go, "Okay, we'll try to get the vehicle back."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I realize I failed to ask when the incident occurred, and it was 6 months prior. you know
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
so just
Exactly.
frustrating.
Yeah, and so think of it this way though too, right? We're talking about cell phones, we're talking about smartphones, we're talking about all that great stuff, but now let's really freak people out, right? We start talking about, and I bring, I brought this up several times on different shows with IoT and everything that's connected and everything that is running, everything that's on the internet, everything I'm able to access. If I was able to travel, that stuff in my house, or now that you have all the vehicles and everything you go and take in and saying, hey, you know what, you need to fix this. I can't just crawl into F-150 anymore, right, and change things. You have to go and everything has a computer on it. But so let's freak people out. Let's talk about some of the things that people might not know. Some of this tech stuff that you have these jurisdictions that are like going, okay, finally, yeah, we're going to think about cell phones and get done. But I mean, that ship has kind of sailed. So let's talk about the things now that are really coming to light and they're going to be in investigations, and what can people do to prepare, one, with the knowledge. I think that's the most important thing, right? And then really, what what can this do for them in an investigation?
There's probably two. I was trying to think of some something I could pull from our tips and tricks class for your viewers, and there's two or three things that did instantly come to mind. And one of them, what is it? It's Guardian. Oh shoot, DNA Guardian, and it's a company. And I only bring it up because of some of the rioting and some of the other incidents we've had. But it's a DNA that you can. That's a small little sprayer type deal over an artery in a stop and rob. So picture your little stop and rob gas station or something, and you've got the main artery door in and out. And so if once you activate the system, you're getting robbed, you hit the little button, you pull the right bill, whatever, um, a miss floats out anywhere during that artery, and that miss will stick to you in your clothes for weeks. And it's specific DNA that can be read, placing you there at that date and time. And
So
those,
that would help because how many investigations have you had? You go and interview them, they're like, yeah, these aren't my pants.
exactly. Your plate,
Right? No, these aren't my pants.
exactly.
Yeah, dude, I found all the dope in your pants. Really?
Yep.
Yeah. I just put them on. I was like running and I put them
Yep,
on. I mean, how often does that happen?
exactly.
So that's good.
That's
I
it.
love it. Keep them coming.
So
What's some more?
a couple other things that I think will be head scratchers for a lot of your audience might be, we used to joke about taking the refrigerator, seizing the refrigerator back in the day, and joking about the TV back in the day. And well, guess what? They have evidence on them, right?
It's
And
true that.
well, guess what? What else your evidence is going to now start taking in is tires, vehicle tires. So smart tires. If you do a little research on smart tires, you will find that tires are well. Let me actually back up. So you're probably familiar with, you can sense the air pressure and all that, right? But the vehicle manufacturers have been trying to figure out a way. It's like, okay, we're making smart cars, but how can we make old cars smart cars? And they figured out by the tires. And there's already technology for the tires to communicate with the roadways and to track speed, to track traffic patterns. And in fact, Goodyear has a tire that generates its own tread. Okay, we'll save that for another another one. It generates its own
I
tread.
need those
Yes.
tires.
So let's take it a step further. The manufacturers of these tires have decided, hey, if we can communicate with the roadways and municipalities' infrastructure, why can't we communicate with other vehicles? And they're going to be doing that via tires. So you're going to have a memory system, and it's gets a little complicated, but keep it simple and just no different than your gauge showing your tire pressure. There'll be information flowing between the vehicles, the speed, and that sort of thing. And so you could take your old AMC Pacer that you have out in the garage and throw in some smart
Sweet.
tires, and you're rocking.
My
You're
Volkswagen
rocking.
thing. My
Yeah,
Volkswagen
there you
thing. I'll
go.
be just driving down the
But
road on it.
but you could take that same car and we can even up the tires one bit, and I'll call it digital license plates. And what has not changed on a vehicle for, I don't know, 130 years? There's one thing that hasn't really changed. Everything else kind of changed a little bit. The doors have gotten fancier. You don't even need handles, right? Ignitions don't even need keys. But license plate has pretty much just been a tin bucket, right? So smart plates are already on the road. This isn't a pipe dream, and they're on the road, California. They're on the road in Arizona. They're on the road. I think they're rolled out in Texas or rolling out in Texas. And I believe Michigan has recently just approved them. They're authorized in all 50 states, and your license plate can now communicate. Yes, your license plate can now communicate via cellular LTE, via GPS, via Bluetooth, and via RFID.
So explain to me why, because I mean, I'm sure people that are watching this are going, "What the?" So I mean,
Exactly.
why?
So
Why do I have a license plate that allows for communication?
so it's cool, right? So we could just stick with that. No, there's always a method to the madness. So you're gonna see a lot of different reasons on why. In fact, I'll bring up the company. It's reviver.com, but it's spelt weird. Let me bring it up in a minute. But here's the marketing behind it. Um, First off, let's pick on electric vehicles. There's a lot of states base their fees for collecting roadway
Right.
money
You're right.
via gas, be at the pump. Electric vehicles, the more electric vehicles you have, the more money the states are losing. So this gives the states the opportunity to still calculate vehicles traveled. Uh,
That makes sense because electric vehicles, I know right now, is a flat fee. It's more expensive to register that, but it's kind of a one-time or it's a registration fee that you pay for it.
Correct.
But now this is like
Absolutely.
a click, click, click
Click.
every mile they
Yeah.
drive.
Now let's take it a step further. When there's a why else would the government? And then I'm going to tell you why you might want it, but we'll save that for last. Um, Another reason might be the RFID. So why have to worry about a toll uh, in the deal? It's an app on your phone, and you update. You got your credit card attached to it, and you go through the toll. And not only a highway toll. Think about parking. facilities, and you just go in, you park, and the parking enforcement is super easy because it just flashes up that you're paid and for how long you're paid for, right there on the license plate. So it gives you those are some features. Uh, the uh, the personal side of it, the GPS, the personal side of it could be multitude. So your car's stolen, your license plate's flashing a stolen sign multiple times. Yeah, as it's going down the highway. um,
This looks like James
oh yeah,
Bond, man. I can press a button and I'm like, hey, I'm in a different state. So yeah, I'm driving and now I'm in Washington, and I just want to make sure I put
yeah,
Washington plates in.
exactly. Amber alerts. So now you can think about it this way: if a geographical area. So let's just say somebody's missing from downtown Dallas. They could light up all the digital plates anywhere in the state with the information related to that. Why would you want it? So there's a number of reasons why I can think commercially, XBOs of the world and all the, Pepsis and all those type of facilities that have thousands of trucks across the country. Who's the guy or gal that has to go and do the stickers on all of them? Well, all of the registration is electronically done remotely. So when you want to pay your registration, you're able to sit in your chonies at home with your feet up, drinking your beer, and it updates on your plate. No more
Yeah,
trips
so
to DMV.
it comes
So
down to
did
us
I
humans being
did I
lazy,
circle it around to
right?
where there's a
You
little
did. So
interest on it?
yeah, yeah, it comes down to just being people being lazy, right? And that comes down to, I mean, start talking about investigations too, and how I don't want to say lazy, right? I mean, where is it where people start realizing how important digital stuff, I mean, those tracks, that data that's left behind by these different types of devices, right? Everything is connected, right? I mean, you walking down the you're walking down the street. Google has you. It doesn't matter whether or not. I mean, you might have just a Gmail account or whatever, right? That's tracking you everywhere. Whether you're taking pictures, whether you're using any GPS, as in, taking a picture, having some EXIF data, all of that stuff is 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 tracking the movements of this mobile device, right? You're driving your car. The cars, like a lot of people understand, and I'm not a say a vehicle forensic type of guy, but I understand that if my car has a computer and it has some sort of GPS device, or it has a camera on the front that's actually not working and going out to the roadways, that is operating, right? Those are things that are operating on there because they say in the interest of making sure that, one, we know how the car's running. I can send in the maintenance alerts. I can do all this type of stuff. When do people realize that for investigations and that type of stuff, that they just walk around and saying, yeah, it's my 1972 Nova, and yeah, it's going to be the same thing that I have. It baffles me.
Well, I think that there's actually kind of in my opinion, an easy answer to that question. You and I,
That was a long,
well,
and now you're going to give me.
no. It's an excellent question, but you got to look at the demographics and just the nature of um, the age groups that we're dealing with. People growing up with tech, they don't really see the problem with it being tracked. They treat it like you and I would treat a Tonka dump truck. Again, I'm dating myself here a little bit, but um, you truly in there, people are like, what video game is a Tonka truck? But you have some people that might be a little more old school and recognize the problems. I'll just use the word problems with being tracked. And and you mentioned Google and that sort of thing. I mean, you can even have your device in airplane mode, as you know, but your viewers just recognize. I mean, here's the other thing coming down the pipe that is pretty impressive is advertising IDs and the information collected with advertising IDs. And fortunately, some forensic tools out there are starting to get up to speed with that, and that is just a treasure trove, and it can be
Yeah.
extremely. That's a whole other. block of
No, isn't
time.
that crazy?
But
I mean, it all operates via Bluetooth and
yeah,
everything else, and these
you're
Bluetooth beacons have been around for a while. I mean, you're walking through the store. Oh yeah, you're in this aisle. Why don't you look for
it,
this? And to me,
it's great.
that freaks
But
the
you're,
shit right out of me.
young kids and young people don't seem to have that concern. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can
Well,
keep,
that's a problem,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because if they don't think it's concerning to them, how are they going to think it's concerning in an investigation, right? If they are going to go in and go into law enforcement, go into corporate security, whatever they're going to be doing, if they don't think that that's important to them, how are they going to go and now translate that into their investigation? That to me becomes an issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then it circles back to the earlier conversation about how do you keep up on all this stuff. And you gotta get guys and gals dialed in your agencies, keep them trained up, and one agency cannot build their grand investigative, unit without truly, you know, the collective of your area. And to have a successful high tech unit, you have to be tied to a lot of different people in your community. And somebody's
So
going to be an expert in that, in that, and that, because you trying to do it all yourself, good luck with that.
question to this is, I mean, well, two questions. One, so with say Post, and you have law enforcement that you have that are going to the academy. What do you think the percentage of courses that they take have anything to do with electronic evidence?
It's extremely low. I know firsthand.
Still to this day.
Yes, it's firsthand. It's extremely low. And
Yeah.
so when you get incidents out in the field, um, that I mean, this goes back a few years, but just a phone call I got, and that went like this: "Hey, we're out on a car stop, and the guy has a bunch of dish receivers in his back seat." Well, how many dish receivers? Well, we stopped counting at 30. Okay. And so how do we find out they're stolen? I go, dude, that's not your problem. Is it? That guy's chipping. He's chipping. He's selling free satellite. Go, and I told him, hey, look for the little cards. And sure enough, the guy had them
Yeah.
all over the place. And it was a great case. But how important? I mean, I don't want credit for that. How important was that picking up the phone and calling somebody that, hey, I think he might know, or she might know? Because how many people would go like this: run them in Klutz, they're clear, okay, maybe they'll take them and go ahead and prove ownership, maybe, okay, or maybe
Right.
not. And how many
Right.
people would do that? And that's that extra step, and that's that knowledge that you train people in an academy and class. Here's what you look for. And then take it a step
Yeah.
further on cell phones. One of my better cases, and involved the death of an officer. One of the key things that tied him to the scene was had nothing to do with tech. It was DNA. It was GSR, gunshot residue that matched the victim was on the frickin' phone.
Yeah.
And those are those little things that where are you going to learn that? But
Yeah.
only if you've had some exposure to it, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I honestly think that Post, I mean, this should be not only the collection, right? Not bag and tag. I mean, that's great that they need to understand what are the collection of evidence, but I think they need to understand the evidence. How monumental can so the zeros and ones be in a particular
Yep.
case that you need to preserve it? Why am I preserving it? Understanding that type, at least instill that so that maybe they're like going, man, that sounds really cool to be able to do. And then field training officers helping them and understand, really the information and how that might help. Being able to go in and talk to CID or
Hmm.
whatever of this type and see that type, go into a tech crime. I just don't think that one either. I don't know if it's just not don't have the cycles that they're able. They just want to make sure that they get people onto the street, put the bodies on the street. But unfortunately, I think that it's a disservice because there's so much training. There's free training. There's all the stuff available that are out there. So I don't want to keep you, but I want you to do this for me, please. You have had your list up for I mean, it has been before me, right? That you've had that. So please tell everyone how they can get onto it. What it can do for them. really the community. Because quite honestly, I'm thinking I'm throwing BK Forensics out there, which I think they might be still around,
Hmm.
but they had like remember that phone forensics
Yeah,
list,
it was
right?
great.
I think you were about the
Hmm.
same time,
Yep.
right? That so again, I'm dating you. It's been around a long time. So quickly, just let people know. How can they get onto it? What do they need to do? What can it do for them?
Absolutely. So the listserv was actually started. Kobe Richards, he's passed away since then, but he was an instructor um, for an ID theft course, and he and I were on the phone before we were doing a class way back in the day, and he was expressing frustration with burning CDs, with sample search warrants, right? Well, we had just finished an investigation involving Yahoo groups at the time, and I thought, you know what? Why don't we just put them on? I'll do a little Yahoo group. Why don't we put it on this Yahoo group, and we'll give it out in class. That way, if people want it, they can get it. If not, don't. No big deal. And that really took off. Again, this was high tech. It was something different. People didn't really weren't really familiar with it. So where that's how it started, and where is it at today? So I have about 10 moderators that I commend because I can't always watch it, although I do have more time now than I used to. But I've got 10 great moderators at different time zones. It is law enforcement only. There are a few exceptions. We have some select vendors on there that are for the good of the order. There are some non-law enforcement on there that are hand-picked. If you feel that you want to reach out to me, that's fine. If you are out of the field, if you're doing defense work, I'm probably not gonna let you in. So we've got a few thousand members from local, state, and federal, mostly in the U.S. and some around the world. And I would say the most popular areas of the listserv. First off, to how you get to it, it's kloving.net. So KLOVING.net is how you get to it. We migrated it from Yahoo some time ago, and it's now on the groups platform, which is extremely clean. It's free currently. I do get offered to get beer quite a bit, and I'll take you up on that. And there we may do there. I have some ideas down the road of what we might do with it, but I want to do my best to keep it free. And we have the first year that it was up, we cleared over a $1 million burglary ring between South San Francisco PD Detective Staller uh, and Larry Smith from Las Vegas Metro. And you know Larry, he's been around a long time, and they connected on my website and cleared a $1 million+ burglary ring. And I thought, man, this is kind of cool, and let's take it a step further. And so what we have on there, there's two main areas. There's a message board, and it's really, Lee, I think you probably will agree. I won't put words in your mouth, but I think some young guys get afraid, young guys and gals get afraid to ask questions on some of these other forums. And I've seen it. I've personally seen them get totally eaten up. And it just frustrates me. We were all there one day. There's no reason to talk down to somebody else. And it turns people off. And what I really like about mine is I've got some pretty impressive propeller heads on my site that are really a lot smarter than I am. And I have seen them take questions from people just starting. Hey, I've just got to sign this and I don't know what to do. I've got boom, boom, boom. And I've seen them walk step by step and then end it with, here's my cell phone if you need my help. And it's like, right on, right on. And so that is the message board side. It's searchable. So if you know, want to bring up a Facebook, boom, you're going to get contacts. Somebody requested today, posted, hey, I need a contact for law enforcement in South Korea. And boom, within about 30 minutes, somebody popped up with a contact information. That's what it's about. So on the other side of the coin, it kind of goes back a little bit of what we were talking about with posts and some of these other things, frustrations with the government. And we have been trying for some time to have a portal, a law enforcement portal, government for search warrants and other tech, and it's been frustrating. So a group of prosecutors led by Ventura Deputy DA Howard Wise, who's been teaching the search warrant class for a long time, he got a group of prosecutors together and they put together a search warrant library, and it is also available on my site. So if you want a search warrant for Pornhub, so most people are out there going, "What's that?" But I know you know what that is, Lee. Uh,
Don't that what?
yeah,
No.
good answer. So there's one on there. I was actually even surprised. And again, that's searchable, and we try to keep it updated every few months. And so it's in right. We just updated it in September, and he updated it to 800 plus warrants. Pretty impressive. And that's also
Yeah, and that's one thing I think that's extremely important to point out is on that is that it's a repository of some fantastic the files, especially on the affidavits, that you're able to go in and actually see this, or with the search warrant side of it, be able to go and see so that you are utilizing obviously something that one successful someone can go to almost a we used to call them like the boilerplate. You have it laid out, but the information is there that they're able to go in and prepare that information and put that forward because it's not going anywhere. We'll have to continue to write paper, have to do that, and serve it on a lot of this. And again, it's a great place, really, in being able to. And I did see that one, especially with the one in South Korea, trying to find. Hey, how can I get a hold of Walmart, right? How can I
yep,
get this? And I mean, the stuff is
yep,
straight away. I mean, the people are getting the contact and information that they need to
yep.
do to try to get a hold of that. And it's honestly the only one that I know of that people can go, I need to go in and serve paper, or I need to contact the security specialist. I need to have that, and they can put that on there and post it, and they're getting that
They
information
are,
straight
and I
away.
want to take it a step further and give guys like Howard Wise kudos, but also like Mike Galley. He's a prosecutor in Santa Clara County, and he's limited on some of the courtroom stuff he does now, and so he's available. And I have seen guys like that reach out to people, call me, call me, call me. And so here, you're a cop in fill in the blank, USA, and now you got a prosecutor that's got a high tech background that's going to walk through and proof your warrant for you. I mean, and so I get a lot of credit for the site, but it's hats off to the members and the content on there that has been we've developed over the years, and again to my moderators, hats off to them. But kloving.net, if you're in law enforcement, you'll be able to get right in with your ID. If you're outside of law enforcement, you're going to need to reach out to me.
I love
So,
it, and I will make sure I put that up on social media. My beer is
oh
done,
man,
my
I'm
friend.
behind.
Yeah.
I'm behind a little bit.
No, 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 it's okay. I just drink my beers really fast. And so I want to thank you. Again, it's been a long time. We don't see each other, obviously, at the conferences because there are none. So I wanted to make sure to get you on because there is so much information that obviously you have seen, that you have done, and that you continue to do. And I want to thank you for that.
Lee, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. I saw some of your previous guests that you've had on, and I'm like, man, they're really smart people, and he's asking me, so I figure you're
Yeah, I'm
scraping the
telling you
bucket a
what.
little bit, but I do
No,
appreciate it, and I toast you, and hopefully we'll be doing it at a conference soon. And thanks for the
you
viewers
know
out
it.
there. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, buddy. We'll see you. Have you again. Okay, again, another forensic happy hour down. I always apologize to the guests because I keep them a little longer, but you know what? When it's a fun story and we keep on going, honestly, it could probably have gone on a lot longer, and then they just become bored with my questions. But hey, everyone, thank you guys for attending. Again, another forensic happy hour. We will be back again next week. And you know what? It might be slim pickings because I believe that is the day after Thanksgiving. So you guys can still, you probably are not going to be working. So what else can you do? You can watch me sit with my guests and drink some beer. Thanks, guys.